Hello, my name is Michael Cagle, Principal of Kennedale High School. Today I want to share part 2 of a presentation with our stakeholders regarding the TEA 2020-21 Principal Residency Grant for Cycle 3. The purpose of part 2 of the presentation is to provide an overview of the recruitment, application, and hiring processes. I will follow this presentation with part 3, where I will examine the evaluation processes of the grant and the role of the KISD District Educational Improvement Committee. This presentation is intended for informational purposes only and to provide a better background for our stakeholders, our district and campus leaders, and potential principal residents. Most of the contents of this presentation are directly from the grant application and the requirements that were laid out by TEA. However, I have provided some recommendations to our district and campus leaders to assist in the initial launch of the grant, as district and campus leaders organize the overseeing committee of the grant. The KISD superintendent is Chad G, and the assistant superintendent is Dr. Julie Vu. Mr. G and Dr. Vu will lead our district's efforts in implementing and organizing the components of the grant. In part 1, I shared some important links with you. I recommend that our district and campus leaders become familiar with the requirements of the grant and specifically attachments 2 and 3 of the Principal Residency Grant. Attachments 2 and 3 contain rubrics that must be used by the committee to design the program and to guide recruitment, application, and hiring processes. I will reference attachments 2 and 3 throughout this presentation. I will also reference specific components of the grant application where we define many recruitment, application, and hiring processes. It is very important that the committee follow the steps we outlined in our original grant application. I want to start today by examining the guidelines that the committee must follow in the recruitment process. The committee, led by the superintendent or designee, will oversee all recruitment and hiring processes. The grant specifies that we must develop strategies to actively recruit potential candidates, and the grant guidelines state that we should seek candidates who have demonstrated evidence of measurable achievement, strong evaluations and appraisals, interpersonal leadership, effective response to observation and feedback, evidence of strategic problem solving, and a growth mindset. When we wrote the grant, we kept these qualities in mind in developing the framework for our recruitment, application, and hiring processes. In the grant application, we listed items that potential residents would have to submit as part of their applications. These attachments are intended to provide evidence that candidates meet these requirements. For example, we require applicants to submit their most recent T-test appraisals to show strong performance. I recommend that district and campus leaders also keep these requirements in mind when developing recruitment, application, and hiring processes. The requirements should be considered for applicant essay questions, interview questions, performance tasks, and rubrics used to rate the applicants. District and campus leaders must also consider the requirements listed in the domains of attachments 2 and 3 of the grant. In domain 1 of attachment 2, TEA states that Kennedale ISD must use the following in their recruitment practices. We must use strategies to identify and actively recruit potential candidates and ensure that our practices are designed to recruit applicants who have the maximum potential for becoming effective school leaders. Our practices must include referrals from district and campus-based leadership, a digital presence including social media, emails, etc., and we must have an event-based outreach that involves the direct interaction with prospective residents. We must also provide evidence that we have intentional strategies that are being implemented to expand the ethnic and gender diversity of candidate pools. In our grant application to meet the criteria in Domain 1, we stated the Kennedale ISD Principal Resident Program Committee will use a three-prong approach to recruitment. That three-prong approach includes a direct targeted recruitment by district and campus leaders, an open nomination process from district employees, and soliciting direct applications from qualified candidates. The first recruitment strategy that we listed in the grant was that we would directly target potential resident recruits by campus and district leaders. We said that the committee would be responsible for soliciting these leaders to identify and submit the names of potential candidates. And we also said that our campus and district leaders would be willing to submit letters of recommendation for anyone that they recruit. The second strategy that we listed in the grant was that we would have an open nomination process, whereas our district and campus leaders and our teachers could nominate potential leaders from their own ranks. The third strategy that we listed was that we would have a process by which we would promote direct applications from qualified candidates from our teaching staff and from our staff members throughout the district without having to be recruited or have a nomination. I do want our committee members to remember that we must use a strong digital presence in all of these efforts. In addition to this three-pronged approach to recruitment, TEA requires KISD to have a public outreach event for potential residents. Therefore, Kennedale ISD and the committee will host the KISD Principal Residency Program Information Meeting on Friday, April 24th, 2020. Because of the COVID-19 closure, the information meeting will be conducted virtually using Zoom. This meeting will include representatives from UT Tyler who will provide potential residents with information regarding the master's program. In the grant application, we listed several key topics that KISD would include in the informational meeting for residents. This includes information about the recruiting, application, and hiring processes and associated timelines. We also said that we would host a question and answer session. As stated earlier, TEA requires that we have a strong digital presence in this grant cycle. To meet these requirements, we stated in our grant application that we would use a digital presence to promote the program, promote our information meeting, and solicit applications. In the grant application, we identified the KISD Public Relations Coordinator to lead these efforts. The primary means of promotion will be through various digital opportunities, including our social media platforms, the KISD application for mobile devices, emails sent to stakeholders through the Blackboard mass communication system, and postings, links, and advertisements on the district's website. Now that we've looked at some of the guidelines that we must follow in the recruitment process, we are now going to look at some guidelines to follow in the application process. For the application process, I want to go back to Domain 1 and remind all of our district and campus leaders that we must use these 6 criteria in developing everything that we do in our application process. For the application process, I want to go over the committee's responsibilities to ensure our campus and district leaders know what's expected of them. First of all, the committee is responsible for developing the job descriptions and application requirements for principal residents. The committee is also responsible for posting or ensuring that the job postings are made on the Region 11 job board. We did say in the grant that we would use the Region 11 job board to post our internal applications. We also said that the committee is going to be responsible for developing all the essay questions. And again, I go back to Domain 1. We should be thinking about that Domain 1 of Attachment 2 and all of those criteria that's listed. And then as we take applications, the committee will be responsible for developing all criteria and rubrics used to screen and rate applicants. In the application process, I want to go over some requirements that we laid out in the grant and also some recommendations or considerations that the committee might use. First of all, we must use the Region 11 job board to make our job postings. On those job postings, one of the things that the committee could consider and is a potential recommendation is that more than one job posting could be used. We don't have to have one job posting whereas applicants apply to one job. We could list those jobs by campus, but again, that is the committee's decision on how those job postings will be made. The district is going to use a strong digital presence. That is another reminder that we are going to use a strong digital presence in all that we do. We said that we would send a mass email regarding the job with the job link and job descriptions to employees to make sure that everyone has equal access to that job posting. And then we said that in the application process, we would use a strong social media campaign that again would be led by the district's public relations coordinator. Finally, I do want to make a note for all our campus and district leaders. We have a recruiting process, a nomination process, and then we have a direct application process. Those were the 3 prongs of our application approach. And so I do want to remind everyone that no matter whether someone was nominated, recruited, or is a general applicant, they must complete an application and submit the required supporting documents by the deadlines established by the district to be considered for the position. Our deadline date for applications in this cycle is going to be Friday, May 1st of 2020. In the application process, we wanted to ensure that we were trying to collect artifacts that would give us an indication on a candidate's abilities to meet the requirements established in Domain 1 of Attachment 2. Therefore, in gold on this slide, I have included a list of items that we said in the grant that we would require with the application. Those include resumes, letter of intent, but there are lots of things that are intended to show that they have had the performance and that they have had the job experience and leadership qualities that the grant requires. The purpose of these things that I've listed, for instance, number 7, evidence of regular participation in campus PLCs or grade level meetings. That is to help us show and help us identify that a candidate has met those requirements of that rubric and shows their leadership potential. So please, committee members, look over this list, and campus and district leaders, be aware that we need to create some rubrics and scoring criteria based upon the things that we collect in the application. Because we are going to require so many things in the principal resident application, I want to look at what types of essays might we be looking for. What kind of essays might I recommend to the committee, to the campus and district leaders developing this portion, so that we don't overwhelm our applicants, but it also helps us identify all of those requirements in Domain 1. The first recommendation that I have to the committee is that we already are requiring a lot out of our applicants, and they also have to apply to the University of Texas at Tyler. So I'm going to recommend anywhere between 1 and 3 essays, and they come from these potential recommended essay sets. First of all, I think that set 1 there, that we should look again at that criteria to see if anything's missing in Domain 1 to help us identify qualified applicants. The second set of essay questions that might be considered are questions to identify applicants' philosophies on education and leadership in general, and they are typical type of essay questions for administrative positions. And then in set 3, we want to include questions potentially to identify an applicant's role and experience in campus leadership. If they are campus leaders, this helps us identify whether or not they are going to be able to move up into those internships or those entry-level administrative positions. And then in set 4, we want to look at questions to ensure the applicant has applied or will apply to UT Tyler. Again, we have a compressed time frame, and they must start anyone that we hire on May 11th of 2020 at UT Tyler. Now I want to move from the application process to the interview and selection process. As the district and campus leaders develop our interview processes, we must consider Domain 1 of Attachment 2 again. The committee must develop an interview process by which screened applicants participate or utilize a combination of the following during interviews. We must test an applicant's cognitive ability. We must test their behavioral patterns. They must participate in simulations and role play. And we are required to use multi-rater assessment instruments and techniques. Next, our campus and district leaders in the resident selection must ensure resident final selection processes include a formal interview of finalists by a committee, and that committee must consist of UT Tyler representatives and district staff. When we are doing the final selection and that committee is looking at our finalists, they must choose candidates who are generally motivated to lead a school, likely to be successful in completing program requirements, are viewed as potential hires by the school district, and possess a growth mindset. All of these considerations need to be taken by district and campus leaders and the committee when they develop their screening criteria and their scoring rubrics. In the grant application, we did identify one instrument that would be used to initially interview and screen candidates. That's the HumanX Ventures Principal Battery of Interview Questions, which is currently used in Kennedale ISD effectively. It is a multi-rater instrument and helps us meet the requirements of Domain 1. Beyond the HumanX Ventures Principal Battery, it is the responsibility of campus and district leaders and the committee to develop our other interview processes, the stages, and the techniques that are designed to measure a candidate's cognitive ability, behavioral patterns, performance on simulations, role play abilities, and performance on other multi-rater instruments and techniques. The committee is responsible for developing all questions, situational scenarios, rubrics, scoring criteria, and other components for these interview processes. After the initial interview stages, the Kennedale ISD Principal Resident Program Committee will develop rubrics and scoring criteria that rank applicants based upon their applications, supporting documents, HumanX results, and the other interview processes and stages. The committee does have to come to a point where they can announce finalists, and then we are required by the grant to host final round committee interviews. Again, that's with members from the Principal Resident Committee, including representatives from UT Tyler. As part of the final round interview, finalists will be asked to make a solutions-based presentation with a topic focused on addressing authentic and campus district needs. Once final round interviews have been conducted and the committee is considering their final selections for principal residents and final campus placements, the committee must develop a process following final round interviews to find the best fit regarding the campus placements for prospective residents, and they should do that in collaboration with the campus principals. Also, when the committee makes those final placements, they should consider the interest of applicants when making those final placements. I do want to remind the committee that the KISD Superintendent and KISD Board of Trustees have the authority to make final approvals for all hiring matters, including the resident placements. After early meetings, the committee has determined the application and selection stages that it will use to select final residents. The first step for all potential residents is that they must submit applications to Kennedale ISD, including all of their essays and attachments, by the required deadlines. Applicants should also apply to the University of Texas Tyler Graduate School. The next step after applications are received, potential residents will be interviewed individually via phone or virtually in what we call round 1 individual interviews, and we will use multiple raters for parts 1 and 2 of that step. In step 3, we will conduct round 2 committee interviews with applicants, and they will be required to go through some simulations and role play. And in step 4, we will have our finalists announced. Round 3 is the finalist committee interviews, and in those interviews they will have a solutions-based presentation for the committee. In this next section, the committee has developed a recruitment and selection timeline. This section is intended for campus and district leaders as they coordinate their efforts for the recruiting, application, and hiring process. When we look at our recruitment and selection timeline, our campus and district leaders must have the end in mind. We must select our residents by May 8th of 2020 so that all of these residents can start at the University of Texas Tyler on May 11th of 2020. In the early processes, during the week of April 13th, by Wednesday, April 15th, the committee will need to develop a process to start the direct targeted recruitment of recruits, and we also need to start the open nomination process. The committee must also develop promotional videos that can be given to district and campus leaders to onboard them and provide them with basic information, and one that they can also give to stakeholders and potential recruits. As the committee sends out information to campus and district leaders regarding the direct targeting and recruitment process and the open nomination process, the committee must also start developing job descriptions and also start preparing to put the job postings online for the principal resident positions. Those job postings, again, will go to the Region 11 job board. The committee also needs to start working on promotional items that will be used to promote the program and the application and recruiting processes. The committee must ensure that job postings are made to the Region 11 job board by Friday, April 17, 2020. I want all campus and district leaders to remember that per board policy, the job posting must be posted a minimum of 10 business days before principal residents can be hired. Remembering this timeline will help us meet our deadline and have the residents chosen by May 8th of 2020. Monday, April 20th is the first day in our board timeline that the job postings and the application window are officially open. On Monday of April 20th and during that week, the committee, along with the KISD PR coordinator, We'll need to promote the job postings as well as the program to potential applicants. As applications are received, the Kennedale ISD Committee will conduct round 1 individual interviews using HumanX from April 20th to May 4th, 2020. There are some key dates that our district and campus leaders must also remember. On Thursday, April 23rd, 2020, KISD leaders will participate in the TEA 2020-21 Principal Residency Grant webinar. And on Friday, April 24th, 2020, the committee will host the virtual KISD 2020-21 Principal Residency Program information meeting for interested applicants with representatives from UT Tyler. This is our public outreach event that is required by TEA. By April 24, 2020, the committee must develop criteria and rubrics that will be used to evaluate and rate principal resident applications. Resident applications are due by Friday, May 1st. By Friday, May 1st, the committee needs to develop processes, questions, solutions-based problems, rubrics, and scoring criteria for the next interview phase, which are the Round 2 and Round 3 committee interviews. In our compressed timeline, we are establishing these deadlines for the committee to stay at least a week ahead of the resident deadlines. The committee will conduct Round 2 committee interviews on May 4th and 5th. District and campus leaders may want to clear their schedules and plan to participate in these interviews. We have set aside Wednesday, May 6th for the committee to discuss, rank, select, and announce the finalists that will participate in Round 3 final round committee interviews on May 7th. I want to remind our committee that the finalists must conduct a solutions-based presentation, and the committee will be responsible for selecting the topic and developing the judging criteria for that portion of the final round interviews. On Friday, May 8th, the committee must rank finalists and select a pool of residents. From that pool, the committee must work with the campus principals to find best fits, and then the committee needs to recommend those finalists, the final principal residents that we choose for 2021, and have them reviewed by the KISD superintendent. And when the superintendent is ready, he may announce those principal residents for the next year. I want to emphasize again that we want to have our residents chosen by Friday, May 8th, so that they may begin their coursework with the long Summer 1 cohort at UT Tyler in the Educational Administration program on Monday, May 11th of 2020. One final note on recruitment and selection: the ultimate authority for hires does lie with the superintendent and our school board. It may be necessary for the KISD school board to approve those principal resident hires at the May 2020 board meeting. The timeline that I just went over was intended more for campus and district leaders and the Principal Resident Committee. Now I want to shift focus and I want to look at the key dates and deadlines for our applicants, or provide them with an applicant timeline summary. This is the general recruiting application and hiring timeline for the upcoming grant cycle. KISD leaders have started the targeted recruiting and open nomination processes. Because of our compressed timeline, KISD teachers and staff members who are even remotely interested in applying for a resident position are encouraged to immediately apply to the UT Tyler Graduate School. Classes begin on May 11th, 2020. KISD will post principal resident positions on the Region 11 job board on Friday, April 17th, 2020. The application window is Friday, April 17th to May 1st of 2020. KISD will conduct round 1 individual interviews as applications are received until Monday, May 4th of 2020. Kennedale ISD will host a virtual information meeting for potential residents on April 24th of 2020. In this meeting, potential residents will learn more details about the grant, the resident program, and the University of Texas Tyler Master's Program. There will be a question and answer session at this meeting. KISD will host round 2 and 3 committee interviews during the week of May 4th, and the committee will choose residents and make campus placements by Friday, May 8th of 2020. Residents will begin the Masters in Educational Leadership program with the long summer cohort at UT Tyler on Monday, May 11th, 2020. I want to thank you for watching part 2 of this series. In part 3, we will look at the evaluation process of this grant cycle and the role of the DEIC. But for now, I'd like to remind you once again of important contacts in case you have questions regarding the grant. If you have questions regarding the 2021 grant, I suggest you send questions to Chad G. Superintendent or Dr. Julie Vu, KISD Assistant Superintendent. If you have questions regarding the UT Tyler Masters in Educational Administration program, I recommend that you contact Dr. Wes Hickey or the practicum supervisors, Dr. Gary Miller and Dr. Carrie Ray. This concludes part 2 of our presentation.